Something historic is happening in Britain right now. Something the mainstream media is scrambling to ignore. Crowds of angry voters have just marched to Buckingham Palace, chanting, waving banners, and demanding a snap general election. And why? Because Reform UK has just done the unthinkable. A political insurgency once laughed at, banned, and blacklisted has exploded into dominance. New data shows Nigel Farage's party surging to a 74-seat majority. Yes, you heard that right. A majority in Parliament. This isn't a protest, it's a reckoning. The people aren't asking politely anymore. They're demanding change, and they're taking that demand straight to the gates of the monarchy. The question echoing across Britain tonight is no longer if Reform UK will govern, it's when. And who will be left standing when the dust settles? The images are undeniable. Hundreds, possibly thousands, of furious British voters have gathered outside Buckingham Palace. This wasn't orchestrated by any party. It wasn't advertised on BBC. It was spontaneous. It was real. A raw explosion of anger and frustration from the British public, who feel ignored, insulted, and betrayed. For decades, they've watched Labour and the Conservatives take turns managing the country's decline. They've watched their communities fall apart while elites in Westminster laughed from behind red velvet ropes. And now they've had enough. These people didn't just come to wave flags, they came to send a message to the King himself. This country belongs to us, call the election, or we'll tear the system down with our bare hands. What sparked this march wasn't just anger, it was momentum. A new megapoll dropped just hours before the protest. Not a single survey, but a comprehensive poll of polls, compiled data from every major polling firm. And the result hit the establishment like a thunderclap. Reform UK is now projected to win a 74-seat majority. Not a handful of seats. Not enough to form a coalition. A full-blown takeover. The type of political swing that rewrites history. Nigel Farage, long dismissed as a political outsider, is suddenly the most powerful man in Britain. Reform UK has leapfrogged over both Labour and the Tories, obliterating the old order like a wrecking ball through stained glass. This march to Buckingham Palace was about more than politics. It was symbolic. The palace represents everything the establishment holds dear: tradition, control, hierarchy. And now ordinary citizens are standing outside its gates saying, "You don't speak for us anymore." Placards read, "We want our country back. Farage or chaos," and "Election now." The chant that echoed the loudest: "No vote, no peace." That's not a warning. That's a promise. This kind of civil eruption doesn't happen in isolation. It's the inevitable result of years, no decades, of neglect, betrayal, and sneering elitism. Working-class Britons were told to sit down, shut up, and trust the experts. They were mocked for voting leave. They were called racists for wanting secure borders. They were told to tighten their belts while MPs took taxpayer-funded holidays and rolled out the red carpet for foreign interests. Every insult, every lie, every smug grin from a Labour MP or Tory minister, it all added up. And now the people are cashing in the debt. Inside Westminster, panic has erupted. MPs from both major parties are reportedly in meltdown behind closed doors. One source inside the Labour Party described the mood as total despair. Another from the Conservatives said it felt like the Titanic tipping into the sea. You don't get polling like this by accident. Reform UK didn't gain this momentum through media endorsements or billionaire donors. They got it from you. From millions of Britons who quietly decided they'd had enough, who waited, who watched, and who are now rising. Not with permission, but with purpose. And what's truly shocking? Reform's projected 74-seat majority comes with just 30.4% of the national vote. That's right. Because of the way our electoral system works, once a movement hits a critical mass, it doesn't just win seats, it dominates. The Tories are now languishing at 17.9%. Labour is stuck at a humiliating 22.6%. The entire foundation of British politics is crumbling under the weight of public disgust. And as Reform rises, a dark cloud hangs over the rest. Who will even be left to fight the next election? Angela Rayner, gone. Rachel Reeves, obliterated. Ed Miliband, reduced to political ashes. Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch, once touted as the future of the Tory right, are polling so low they're likely to lose their seats. Think about that. The supposed stars of British politics are about to be voted out by binmen, bakers and builders. That's what happens when the people wake up. The British political system is now experiencing a collapse more devastating than any modern crisis. Labour and the Conservatives, once unshakable pillars of the post-war order, are watching help. Inside Parliament, the panic is turning into betrayal. Multiple sources have confirmed that dozens of Tory MPs are now secretly in contact with Reform UK figures. Some are considering defections. Others are planning quiet retirements before the next election to avoid public humiliation. And in Labour's camp, the fear is even more palpable. After months of scandal, Angela Rayner's property dealings, Diane Abbott's racial gaffes, and Lucy Powell's horrifying remarks, voters see a party that's out of touch and rotting from within. Labour tried to silence dissent within its own ranks by purging voices like Abbott and forcing out critics. But now that strategy has backfired. With reform surging, Labour looks weak, fractured, and unprepared for what's coming. Even shadow cabinet members are reportedly warning Starmer that a leadership crisis is imminent. But there's no one strong enough left to challenge him. It's a party of ghosts clinging to a broken narrative. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has become the lightning rod for national frustration. His return to politics was ridiculed at first. Journalists called him washed up. Commentators claimed Reform UK was a vanity project. But now those same voices are silent or desperately rewriting their takes. Farage's popularity isn't about charisma alone, it's about clarity. While other leaders dodged questions and played it safe, Farage spoke directly to the fears and hopes of everyday Britons. He talked about mass immigration without flinching. He condemned net zero extremism. He called out the cowardice of politicians too afraid to say what the public is screaming behind closed doors. His message isn't polished, but it's honest. And that's why it's spreading like wildfire. Even more astonishing is Reform UK's success in places once considered unwinnable. From the northern Red Wall to the southern Shires, voters are flipping allegiances at record speed. In towns battered by crime, Stretchford schools, and housing shortages, reform isn't just an option, it's a lifeline. The party's message on immigration has struck a nerve across every class and region. The call for a national identity, rooted in pride and control, has awakened something powerful. Something the establishment hoped would stay buried after Brexit. But this isn't just Brexit 2.0. This is bigger. This is the British public rising against every institution that tried to suppress them. Against the press, against the banks, against Parliament itself. And now the pressure is reaching the monarchy. The march to Buckingham Palace wasn't just a protest. It was a direct challenge to the only remaining symbol of continuity. The crowd didn't demand speeches, they demanded action. Use your voice or lose our respect, one banner read. Others called on King Charles to dissolve Parliament, as is his constitutional right, and force a general election. It's a reminder that while the monarchy may be ceremonial, it still holds symbolic power, and the people are calling in that symbolism now. Not out of disrespect, but out of desperation. They've tried everything else. Now they're taking their plea to the last bastion of national tradition. And what's more unnerving for the establishment is that this isn't just a moment, it's a movement. Social media is ablaze. Hashtags like #ReformMajority, #Farage74, and #March to Buckingham are trending globally. Videos from the protest have already gone viral, showing elderly veterans, young workers, mothers with children, all united in their demand for a new Britain. This is not the fringe anymore. This is the mainstream. And while Labour and the Conservatives bicker over policy scraps, Reform is redefining what leadership looks like in real time. The party is actively preparing for government, holding internal strategy sessions, vetting candidates, and outlining bold plans for immigration control, economic reform, and national sovereignty. Yet even as reform rises, the establishment media remains in denial. The BBC barely covered the Buckingham Palace march. Sky News dismissed it as fringe anger. But the public is no longer watching through that lens. Trust in traditional media has cratered. Independent journalists, live streamers, and citizen reporters are now the primary source of truth for millions. The elite's greatest weapon, control of the narrative, has been shattered. And in that vacuum, Reform UK is filling the void with purpose, clarity, and vision. As night falls over Britain, one thing is now undeniable. The old political order is dying. What comes next will not be decided in a quiet committee room or a cosy BBC debate. It will be decided on the streets, at the ballot box, and in the hearts of ordinary people who've finally found a party that speaks for them. The 74-seat majority is not just a number, it's a warning. A warning to those in power that their time is up, and a promise to the people that their voice, long ignored, is now impossible to silence. The march to Buckingham Palace may appear to some as a symbolic gesture, but its implications are seismic. It marks the first time in recent history that ordinary Britons have physically taken their demand for change directly to the doorstep of the monarchy. This is not a mere protest. It is a declaration of democratic defiance. It reflects a nation that no longer trusts Parliament, no longer believes in the fairness of its electoral process, and no longer accepts being patronised by those who claim to serve them. What unfolded in London was not just a gathering of political dissidents. It was a convergence of exhausted citizens, betrayed voters, and awakened patriots who now see Reform UK as more than a party. It is, to them, the last hope for national salvation. The sheer diversity of the crowd was astonishing. From blue-collar workers to pensioners, from students to small business owners, the people marching through the capital all had one thing in common. They felt unheard. They marched not because they were following orders from a leader or union, but because they've had enough of broken promises, hollow speeches, and economic policies that punish the honest and reward the corrupt. They've seen the cost of mass immigration on their communities, the erosion of British values in their institutions, and the hollowing out of national pride by globalist policies pushed by Labour and the Tories alike. They are not extremists, they are the backbone of Britain, and they're roaring back to life. What terrified the political class the most wasn't the chanting or the banners, it was the organisation. Within hours of Reform UK reaching a projected 74-seat majority in the polls, grassroots networks activated. Local groups across England, Wales, and even parts of Scotland began coordinating actions. Telegram channels exploded in activity. Thousands of citizens shared images, videos, and locations in real time. This was no random flash mob, it was a strategic, coordinated mobilisation of political pressure. Every chant of election now echoed through Westminster like a thunderclap. The Prime Minister's residence was flooded with calls and emails demanding an immediate vote. Civil servants were reportedly told to prepare for a public relations crisis of historic proportions. And behind the scenes, senior cabinet officials began scrambling, some even threatening to resign if Sunak refused to make a public address. But in classic establishment fashion, the response was silence, then dismissal. Government spokespeople attempted to downplay the march, suggesting it was small, unrepresentative, and fueled by online disinformation. The irony was breathtaking. A ruling elite that had ignored growing discontent for over a decade was now pretending it didn't exist. But the people aren't listening to them anymore. They're listening to each other. And that collective voice is growing louder by the minute. For years, voters were gaslit, told that their concerns were xenophobic, their patriotism was outdated, and their faith in national sovereignty was naive. Now they're reclaiming the narrative. They're demanding leaders who represent British values, not globalist interests. And in Farage, they believe they've finally found one. At Reform UK's headquarters, the atmosphere is intense but focused. Insiders say Farage and his top team are now treating every day as if they're already in government. Emergency policy meetings have been held to prepare for the possibility of a snap election. Legal experts are being consulted about Parliament's potential vulnerabilities. Economists are drafting countermeasures to protect British industries from further decline. Immigration analysts are mapping out strategies to restore border control without bureaucratic delay. This is not performative politics. This is serious preparation by a team that knows history is watching. And Farage, ever the strategist, is playing the long game. While other parties panic, Reform is positioning itself as the adult in the room, the only force with a plan, a purpose, and the courage to act. Meanwhile, Labour's collapse continues to spiral. The internal chaos has reached new levels, with senior MPs now reportedly accusing Starmer of authoritarian leadership. Critics say his obsession with image management has hollowed out the party's soul. Starmer's refusal to back candidates with strong local ties, his top-down control of party messaging, and his dismissive attitude toward working-class concerns have alienated vast swathes of traditional Labour voters. And as the reform surge continues, local Labour councillors are being flooded with resignations from long-time members. "I voted Labour my whole life, but I don't recognise this party anymore," one letter read. That sentiment is now a national chorus. And it's not just Labour. Even some Lib Dem supporters, once staunchly Europhile and anti-Farage, are beginning to admit that Reform UK may be the only party actually listening to the public. As the pressure mounts, Buckingham Palace remains under tight security. Yet within royal circles, reports are emerging of intense private discussions. While King Charles remains publicly neutral, sources suggest that senior advisors are deeply concerned about the escalating unrest. The King's constitutional role may be ceremonial, but the symbolism of his silence in the face of national protest could prove politically dangerous. Monarchists argue that the Crown must not be seen as complicit in parliamentary arrogance. Calls are growing louder for Charles to at least acknowledge the scale of the crisis. But whether he speaks or stays silent, the people have made their move. They are not waiting for permission anymore. They are asserting their will, and they are not going back. In the coming days, the British public will face a defining moment. Will the establishment dig in its heels and refuse to acknowledge reality? Or will it be forced by sheer pressure from below to surrender to the inevitable? The demand is simple: an election. Not in 2 years. Not after more empty debates. Now. The polling numbers speak volumes. Reform UK's projected 74-seat majority is not a fluke. It is the result of a tectonic political shift. A realignment unlike anything seen since the post-war consensus broke down. And if the government refuses to listen, the streets may speak again, with even greater volume and resolve. The moment has arrived. The stakes have never been higher. Britain stands at a crossroads where silence is complicity and inaction is surrender. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about the future of a nation, the very identity of Britain itself. You've seen the polls, you've heard the whispers behind palace walls. You've witnessed the unstoppable surge of Reform UK as they shatter the old order and promise to put power back into the hands of the people. But none of this matters unless you make your voice heard. Every vote counts. Every voice matters. The establishment has tried to silence dissent, to gaslight the electorate, to dismiss genuine concerns as extremist nonsense. But the tide is turning. The question is, will you stand on the sidelines and watch history unfold? Or will you step forward and be part of the revolution? This is your chance to demand accountability, to demand transparency, and to demand real change. The march to Buckingham Palace was just the beginning. Now it's time for every citizen to rise up in their own communities, to make their voices impossible to ignore. Contact your local representatives. Join grassroots groups that are fighting for Britain's future. Share the truth, unfiltered and unedited, with your friends, family, and neighbours. Refuse to be silenced by mainstream media's lies and spin. This is a movement born of anger, hope, and sheer determination. It needs your energy. It needs your courage. It needs your vote. Because when millions of Britons unite behind a cause this powerful, the impossible becomes inevitable. Reform UK's 74-seat majority is more than just numbers on a chart. It's a mandate for change, a call for revolution, and a beacon of hope for those forgotten by Labour and the Tories alike. The establishment fears this moment, but you should embrace it. This is your country, this is your fight. And the time to act is now. Make your voice heard. Demand the election that will decide Britain's future. The clock is ticking. History is watching, and nothing will ever be the same again.